Tell me your story.
Tell me your story.
How did it all start? Do you remember?
Oh, now what happened? How did it stop?
This is Small Business Origins.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Small Business Origins. You're tuned in. It is our nationwide search. We're looking for entrepreneurs that have a story to tell. And joining me virtually in the studio, because this entrepreneur is living life where he wants to while he does his work. From Barcelona, I've got Cameron McKay. He is with Process.st. Cameron, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Dude, I'm excited. This has been a podcast episode in the making for quite a bit of time. Here at Beefy, we are huge fans of Process.st. We are customers of yours. We've paid not only for the software, but for the extra stuff that we love, like, having a Process.st expert that we can contact anytime. She sat down with us, said, we have this many hours. What are your goals? Let's get this thing going and make Process.st even better for you. She did. It was amazing. But I'm not trying to hop into an advertisement for you just yet. It's just, I am excited for this episode because I like having companies on and entrepreneurs on that I like personally and professionally. So I'm excited to speak really highly of your product today, but it's authentic, man. So before I continue down this rabbit hole that I've already started on, we have to start out with an icebreaker question. We start every single episode with one. And today I kind of want to go a little bit deep. Usually some of these are kind of funny, happy questions. And, sometimes they're simple, silly, whatever. But this one's kind of deep. And it is, if you had 1 hour to live, what would you do in your final hour? I know.
I mean, I feel like my answer is going to be really cliche, but it would be spend it with my wife and my daughter and son.
That's 100%. That was my answer. And why this question stuck out to me today was, first of all, let me answer it and say that, yeah, exactly with you, man. I want to spend time with my wife, with my kids. If any other family and friends would want to be there, more than happy to have that too. But I think the most important thing to me is I would want to spend time with my son, my sons, my daughter, and my wife. And it doesn't necessarily translate for everybody. Like for you, you may get to do quite a bit of this because thankfully you have been able to set yourself up the way that you want to. Living in Barcelona, I'm sure that you prioritize your family first, but most American families spend 37 minutes of quality time together each day during the week.
Yeah, it's not very much.
37 minutes a day. We spend 8 hours plus at work. Yeah. But with the thing that's most important that us, especially when we talk about men, right? Like, for us, for men, like the majority of the answer on their deathbed is, I wish I would have spent more time with my spouse and with my children. And it's like, good God, man, take that time now.
Yeah.
Like, why are you waiting until your final hour to do that? Do it now and worry about your family and getting that quality time in right now. I don't even have to read all the stats on it to tell you that, spending time with your children, the quality and meaningfulness of that time is so important. Those interactions have a lasting impact on children as they grow into adults, man. Like it is so important for you to have a great home life for your children so that they can grow up to be good people. So yeah, I'm with you, man. That is the one thing that stuck out to me most was like, God, maybe even I need to prioritize more time because 37 minutes is just not enough.
Talking about this, I'm like, yeah, I gotta spend more time.
Yeah. And see, that's the crazy part is no matter where you are in your journey, you can have a very successful company. You can be a very successful CEO, entrepreneur. You can, work for somebody and have a great job and have a lot of time to spend. And it's like, yeah, I can still audit my time and probably, fix that a little bit, which again, shameless plug here. Software like Process.st, that's exactly what it helps entrepreneurs do. And I'm not trying to like muddy up our deep, impactful conversation here with an ad, but like 100%, if you do a time audit and see where you're spending your time and automate some of those processes, it can really help you to spend more time doing what you need and what you want.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah, before we hop into it, man, I have to stop and talk about our sponsors. And if you're tired of juggling multiple platforms for your marketing and sales needs, it's time to revolutionize your business operations with Wingman. Wingman is an all-in-one marketing automation software designed by experienced marketers who understand your struggles. It's a game changer that combines the best tools to streamline your communication, automate your workflows, and grow your business. You can capture leads using landing pages, surveys, forms, and more. And you can nurture those leads with personalized messages via voicemail, SMS, emails, and even Facebook Messenger. And you can close those deals with built-in tools to collect payments, schedule appointments, and track analytics. Say goodbye to multiple marketing tools and hello to Wingman. It's your unified platform for all of your business needs. Enhance your online presence, manage your reputation effectively, and cultivate leads effortlessly. If you're ready to take your business to new heights, visit trustyourwingman.com today and let Wingman be your co-pilot to success, because every business needs a wingman. But Cameron, we're here to talk about you, man. So the same thing I ask everybody is, how'd you get into entrepreneurship? Where'd you come from? Who are you? What's your origin story?
Right. Yeah, this is a long story. So I've always been interested in, software engineering since like the day that I understood what a computer was. And, playing video games and using different apps, my mind was kind of blown one day when I talked to my older brother, and he told me that like people write like software and that's how it all works. And I was like, mere mortals like me, we could like, create applications. And he was like, yeah, it's like in programming code. And I remember that just like unlocked my brain when I was like, I want to learn how to do this. Like, I have to know how to do this. And so one day I picked up a book on Perl and I started just like going through it. And from there, I started making like CGI, which is like back in the day, like how you used to do stuff before PHP and whatnot. And I started making web pages, and then I ended up making web pages for some people. And then from there, I decided I wanted to start making games with a friend, and we did that. And the issue with that particular company was that we were both technical, and no one wanted to really do the business side. And so we made like a game, and we sold like 5 copies, and then it kind of pittered out. And that's kind of when I realized that like I need to work with somebody who can do the things that I don't want to do, right? And who actually like really enjoys doing it, and ideally like vice versa. They don't really like to do the things that I want to do. So what happened next was basically I'd been a freelancer for a while, and I decided that I was like sick of being a freelancer, and I wanted to start working on a product. And before I did that, I'm like, I'm going to take a month off, and I'm going to go and travel to South America, because when I start working on this product, I'm not going to have any free time again. And so my first night there, I'm at the hostel in Buenos Aires, and I'm sitting beside this guy, and we're going around the table kind of introducing, what kind of jobs we do or what do we do, when we're not traveling. And when it gets to my turn, I say that, I'm a software engineer. And the guy beside me, just immediately turns to me and he's like, I have this idea for this company. And I was like, okay. Cause I don't know, when you're a software engineer, people always pitch you and they want you to work for free. And and the majority of the time it's really bad ideas, or not very well thought through ideas. Right. So I started asking questions like, what do you want to do? Okay, what's the business model? Okay. What are the first steps? And every single question I asked, he had an answer, right? He's like, actually, I have a deck here. I can go through it with you. And that guy turned out to be my co-founder. And we started talking, and he's like, you should come and live in Buenos Aires. I'll pay for the food and the beer and the apartment. And, we'll have this
sold
and we'll have this equity split, and, he's like, what do you have to lose? Right? Worst case scenario, you'll be in Buenos Aires. So I was like, okay, I have my trip to go on. I'll think about it. And then I'll meet you back here in a month. So I came back. He took me out to the most expensive steakhouse in Buenos Aires, and I was like, okay, fine, let's do this. This sounds like a fun adventure at the very least. So I went back to Canada. That's where I'm from, and I sold my apartment and packed my bag, and in 2 weeks I was living in Buenos Aires, and we were starting to work on what became Process.st. So it was it's sort of as I was boarding the airplane to go back there, I was sort of what do I do? I'm going to go and live in an apartment with this guy I literally met a month ago, and I don't know anything about him other than we both want to make this software product.
Yeah.
So we started working on it kind of bootstrapping, because we didn't have any money. We weren't really known in the sort of VC community. So we couldn't go and raise money or anything, because we're nobody, right? So Vinay had a marketing company that he was running on the side, and that's sort of where the genesis for Process.st came from, was that he had like, 5 or 6 employees. And every time he tried to scale past that, it became kind of impossible. Like the overhead of checking everyone's work and making sure they were like not going outside the lines and everything was too much. And he was trying like Asana, he was trying like, anything, just, other checklist software and stuff like that. And the problem is that like people would always just go outside the lines. If there was an opportunity for them to like not check a task or put a task in that they just made up, or, just do something that like wasn't anticipated, they would do it. And he's like, I want something where it's just like on rails. It's kind of like Asana, but like I want to be able to like to, have rich content, and I want to be able to make sure that they can't do things that they're not supposed to do. So we're like, okay, that'll be our first customer. It'll be like your marketing company, because like it'll also help your marketing company run better, right? And so we started to build the product, and I would work for 2 months, and then I would stop and I would do like a freelance job from one of my old customers to get money again, so I could go out and eat and stuff like that. And then I do a job for like two weeks to a month and come back and start working on the product again. And then Vinay would also work in his marketing company to raise some money so we could, pay for the servers and whatever. So we kind of did that for about 6 months. And then we ran into some guys from Startup Chile, which is like a accelerator incubator in Chile, in Santiago. And the thing that attracted us to that one was that they will give you, I think it was $50K US and take no equity. The only catch was you had to go and live in Santiago for 6 months. And that was sort of like their plan for seeding their, entrepreneur community, because they're like, people aren't coming here to do it otherwise. So why don't we just attract them with free money?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so we're like, well, that sounds good. I could live in Santiago. It's like not that far from here. And, we'll have 50K more. So we went and we hired like a videographer, and we spent like a day at this warehouse in Buenos Aires, just like recording, just hours and hours of sort of different scenes and dialogue. And then we like cut it all together and added in some, app screenshots and whatever. And we submitted it, and we got in. So we kind of packed our bags, ended our lease, and got on a plane to Santiago. And we kind of, I don't want to like rip into Startup Chile. It was like the people there are great, but it's not like, there's not like a ton of people to learn from there. So the main benefit for us was like sort of the environment and the money. And we started to use that, and we built the product up further. And then at the end of the 6 months, we during that time, we'd been applying to AngelPad and YC, Techstars, all those kind of places. And we basically got invited to pitch to like the MIT investment group in Boston. And we're sort of like, well, we're not doing anything here anymore. Like we've kind of blown through this money, and we need money to keep going. So we decided to go and do that and see how that went. At the same time, we were in like the final rounds with AngelPad and Techstars London, I think it was. So we go to Boston, and we have no money still. So we're staying in this like really gross hostel. Like it was like a room with, I don't know, like 30 beds of like smelly, sweaty guys. It's like the middle of the summer. trying to get some sleep to go to this thing. And it's like, oh man, like how long is this gonna be like this? But I don't know, there's sort of, it's bad, but you're also kind of invigorated by it. You're like, okay, yeah, this is like the process, right? Like you have to, go through this to get to the thing that you want, right? So we were there, and then we do a call, a final call with Techstars and a final call with AngelPad. And we're pretty sure we're gonna get into Techstars and not so sure about AngelPad. And then we get the final decision from Techstars, and they're like, no. We're like, oh God. And then we get the call from AngelPad, and he's like, yeah, you guys are in, like, come to New York. We're like, oh my God. Okay. So a lifeline that's like 76 more K, like, and AngelPad's like one of the top, or was one of the top accelerators. I don't think they do it anymore. So, I think we jumped on a plane, maybe took a train. I can't remember. Somehow we got to New York. And this is like, I think and like during this time, we've kind of gotten some customers. We probably maybe have 10 or 20 of the product. So we've got a little bit of revenue, but like, not enough to really do anything. It's more of a, telling us that we have a little bit of signal, like we're onto something, but like, it's not like, it's
more
not
of a
enough.
Testing ground at this point.
Yeah. I guess like a pricing test almost, right? Like that's how we framed it in the end, because we just sort of thought, okay, this is not like quite where we need it to be yet, but, it's interesting to know that there's some people who are going to pay for it. Yeah. So we got there, and AngelPad was sort of like the big unlock. I think that's where we went from being a sort of like wannabe startup to being like a real startup. Because there it was just like insane. It was like, 18-hour days. And then, if you're not like working on the product, you're like talking to other like it's about 13 companies. You're talking to other founders and like telling them about your product. And then if you're not doing that, you're like meeting with all these different people like VCs and, other companies that have gone through that are successful, and everyone's just sort of like brain dumping on you, right? Like you're eating pizza and drinking beer and just like learning all the inside track about like, how to present yourself, like how to think about the market, all kind of things. So that was about 3 months there. And then after that, you're sort of just like set free, right? It's like now you start your real fundraise, like, cause now you have like some social proof. Like when an investor sees AngelPad, they will talk to you because like you've been like de-risked a bit, right? So like now when your email comes in the email box, you're not just like thrown in the sort of like, who's this guy pile? They'll like at least listen to your pitch. But most of the time they won't do anything, but they'll at least talk to you. And that's like a huge game changer. And I think that's like one of the big values of getting into one of the big accelerators is that like, that'll get your foot in the door. Right. So yeah. So basically we started a fundraise. We got a bunch of meetings at first, and then it sort of pitted out. We were going to all the meetings together. And that was really good at the beginning because, I could give Vinay feedback on, how I thought the investors were responding to different things we said. And, but I got to a point where it's just like, okay, I don't think I'm adding a lot of value. And like, we have all these things that we need to do in the product to help us raise. And so Vinay's like, okay, fine, I'll go to the meetings and you stay in our hotel and like basically code all day. So we did that for a bit, but then it was getting harder to get meetings. So Vinay had an idea. At the time, AngelList was a social network for, entrepreneurs and VCs and angels and all that kind of stuff. And they had an API. So we started scraping the API. It wasn't scraping, I guess. We're using the API, and we just generate like this giant list of potential investors based on like their categories. And then I wrote a script that would basically queue up these emails in like a drip marketing thing. And then we would just fire it off like hundreds, right? And basically it would come back into, at the time, there's this product called X.AI, which is sort of like a virtual assistant, like, but a real virtual one, like, and it would come into that, and then basically like the investor would talk to the robot, and like they'd get like a time scheduled, and then Vinay every day would just look at his calendar, and it would just like be all filled in with all these from like this sort of automated lead generation, I guess, thing that we came up with.
And what year was this?
This must have been like 7 years ago or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So before, because now all these things are commonplace. Like people are probably listening to this and they're like, well, yeah, I know about all this, but this was a time where this would have required manual labor on your part. I mean, I say manual labor, like obviously you would have to go in and write all this stuff yourself. Besides the fact that you're that, coding software engineer guy. So you could kind of make up your own way before it was such an easy path now.
Yeah. Like I remember when we were talking about people at the time and no one was doing this, and we were sharing like the code with like our friends and stuff, our close friends.
$1 million code.
Yeah. We're like, maybe we should make this product, right?
Well, and that is kind of incorporated into the product now, right?
With
automation, sending emails out at least.
Yeah, that part's in
one
there.
time.
Yeah. We don't have it like a drip. You have to use like another product for that. But that's an interesting idea. Yeah. And then, so I think we started doing that. Vinay was doing probably like, 7 or 8 meetings a day. Luckily at the time, it was like when Uber Pool was introduced. And so like every single Uber was like $7 no matter where you went. And so we were using that. And so we just got lucky and, he met a bunch of interesting people on the way doing that. But probably about after, I don't know, 200 meetings, maybe we finally like got a good lead with what ended up being Blackbird, like one of our main investors. And we were in like the final stages with them. And and then we ended up closing like 6 figures with them. And that was like, we entered like a new age kind of, because now we had money. And now we could pay ourselves like very meager salaries, but we could pay ourselves salaries. So I didn't have to work a second job. And we could start hiring people. It was just at this point, Vinay, myself, and a VA in India that Vinay had worked with for ages, and who became like an employee of the company. So we're like, okay, we don't have a lot of money. I'm a Canadian, he's an Australian. So we have to go somewhere. We can't stay in the US any longer. So we decided to move from, at this point we were in San Francisco. We decided to move to Cancun, because we're like, it's got an easy airport to get to. So if we have to come back to the States, it's like, there's going to be direct flights pretty much to most major places. So we packed our bags and got like a penthouse apartment by the water there. And that was also our office, right? We got like one that had like enough space that we could set up an office in one of the rooms. And then we started to build like our initial team. And so that's when I had a transition from being just a software engineer into a manager. And that was like a rough transition. Like I feel like I've gotten there now, but that was mostly due to like reverse mentoring, where like later on we hired a director of engineering, and he basically like reverse mentored me into a good engineering manager. So then I had to Vinay's like, hey, you got to hire like 2 engineers. And I was like, I don't know how to hire anyone. I've never hired anyone in my life. I don't even know like what I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to ask. And he's like, well, find someone you want to work with. And so I did a whole bunch of research and made some questions, and then, started interviewing some people. We eventually hired, who he's not with us anymore, but was with the company for about, 6 years as like our engineering lead, and then another engineer. And then while we were doing that, I was giving them tasks. I didn't even, because like my background story before that, I was a freelancer. So I was always working on my own or in like small teams, but like we never used things like Jira or any sort of issue tracking, even though it was obviously free in GitHub and stuff like that. So, then, I was giving one of the engineers her tasks in like Wunderlist or something. And then one of the guys that came in, he's like, no, this is not going to do. Like we have to set up like Jira and all this stuff. So anyway, after we'd closed like Blackbird, then like the sort of dominoes, so while we were in Cancun, dominoes started to fall, and other people who were waiting for like a lead, saw that we had a lead. And so we closed a bit more money, and then, we started building the product out. And, along the way, I decided to move back to Canada for a bit to kind of recharge, and Vinay moved to Mexico City. And then we started to get some decent traction with some pricing changes that we made. We added like a new plan, like a premium plan. And we got enough growth that we could start to raise another round. And so we raised like a second seed basically, and then got our numbers a bit. And then after, I think, like 2 years, we did our Series A. And then that was like the second or the next big unlock, because the Series A money was like significantly more than any of the seed money that we had. And so at this stage, and we got like a really name brand investor like Excel, which is like one of the top founder friendly, I guess, investors. And in that case, now we had to hire like a whole bunch of VPs and stuff. And that was like interesting. So all of a sudden we had like another layer of management and like all these other things going on at once, and like these big marketing campaigns and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the market crashed and, we had to like shrink a little bit to like sort of, get burn under control. And now, yeah, since then, like we've been slowly, growing back up again, and, things are going well, and the app's, getting more and more featureful. We've been like spreading out into like a more multi-product, solution with, forms and data sets and, and a few other like workflows. I'm missing one, Pages. That's the one, to sort of like cover all the ground, and basically through conversations with the customers and where we see like people using the product. So that kind of gets you up to date. I don't know if you wanted that whole story, but
yeah, no, it's awesome to hear these kinds of stories, because so many entrepreneurs have so much in common with a story like that, where it's like, great idea, we need money, you bootstrap it, we don't have somebody just funding us everything that we want. But what's different is the in between for everybody, the steps that they go through, the things that they see and do. And I mean, it sounds like a fun way, traveling through Cancun and all these different places, going back home to Canada and, all this stuff to kind of make it happen. But I'm sure it wasn't fun in the moment. In the moment, you're probably scared the whole time. Yeah, I like definitely have like, distinct memories, because like when we were in San Francisco, there's also like close calls too, where we almost raised and then at the last second, didn't get it. And it's like, oh my God, like, are we going to do this for like 6 months and then at the end have nothing to show for it, Yeah. And then I'm sure that happens. Like, I know it happens all the time, right? I wouldn't really say it's like you have nothing to show, because I think if you spend like 6 months or a year fundraising, you learn a lot, right? And then like, sure, a lot of the times those same entrepreneurs, they go out again and, they use those learnings in their next company, right? And their contacts. Failure is the only guarantee in this business.
Definitely. Yeah. But I remember like, so to save money, Vinay and I, like we shared a hotel room that had like 2 double beds. And, I remember just sitting there being like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Like, I'm just, just this person's like right next to me, like all the time. And like, we're always talking about the business, and it's just like, it's too much. Like it's a lot. But in the end, like, you go to sleep, you wake up the next day, you got like some things to work on, and, you get back into it. You remember like, what you enjoy about it. And it's just like an adventure, right? So, I mean, I think I was fortunate that like I always knew that like if I failed, I could just go back home to my parents and like, regroup and then like, start again. But that I think that's my particular situation. That I don't think everyone has that advantage. But
sure, but the thing is, there's always the entrepreneurial mindset is that I'm going to push as hard as I can for as long as I can, and know that there's always going to be an out because I can get through it. So it doesn't matter, like somebody like me who's on entrepreneurial journeys all the time. I don't have parents to fall back on, even when I was younger and just starting out doing the things I did, because my parents passed away at an early age. I don't have rich family. I come honestly from nothing. Like, we had great times in our life, and then we also had some really poor times in my life. And then I've lost quite a bit of family members. And you're right. Like, my situation, if I was your age doing the same thing at the same time, would have been a very different situation if everything would have failed and I would have gone back to zero. Mm-hmm. But I think what sets the entrepreneur apart from, and no offense to them, but the people who want to line up at McDonald's, Walmart, Dollar General, or any other store that's in your area to go get a job and work for that company, what sets the entrepreneur apart is they're not afraid to fail. And it doesn't mean that they never have that fear, because I'm sure there's some times where you were probably sucking up seats because you were so scared that, hey, if this fails, like you said, for 6 months, I've done this and had nothing. But it's like knowing that through it all, you're going to make it, because failure is not the end all be all result that you're comfortable with. So you're going to pick up and get back to it. That's something you said that stuck out to me, was entrepreneurs know we have to push through, and it's hard when we're in that moment. I mean, that's something I've recently gone through where it's like, man, this is it. Like, we're going to be done. and if something doesn't change, and then somehow, no matter what you believe, it's like something always happens, whether it's fate or God or whatever the case may be, that kind of pushes you to that point that you needed. It seems, in my life, at least, that's been my experience. So I don't know. There's probably a lot of entrepreneurs out there right now that are like, man, in 1 month, I've got nothing to show for everything I did. But it's like, yeah, but what are you going to learn from that? And then when you move on, where are you going to go? Because like I said, the only thing that's guaranteed is failure. You're going to fail. It's just, what are you going to fail in and how are you going to handle it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like when you say like, oh yeah, what I have to show for it, but it's like, you tried. Like, I think that's like, you're already doing a lot more. Like, most people are way too afraid to even take that step, right? Of like trying to do their own business. And like, whenever anyone starts, you don't know what you're doing. I didn't even have plan. Like, when I planned to do a product, I was planning to join like another person's startup. I wasn't planning to be the founder. It just like, that's what happened. And I was like, this is an opportunity I can't pass up. This seems like, it could be a lot of fun. It also worked out in the sense that Vinay and I really got along and became like best friends along the way and had a lot of little adventures and, experiences together. So, but even when we were like, starting to feel like, oh, maybe we're not gonna be able to raise, we were talking about other companies that we do. It's like, okay, fine, we'll go back and we'll like, here's some other ideas that we've been thinking of that we could do. Right. And now we know what kind of text we want to use. We know like kind of like, will we change this time if we built it to save a lot of time, that kind of stuff. So, and I think that's why like, serial entrepreneurs, like their second time, they just seem to like move so much quicker, right? Because they've gone through and they've made all the mistakes.
I was gonna say, you've already made those mistakes.
Yeah. You're just like, oh yeah, you know what I would do there's so many things in Process.st where I would be like, if I was doing this today, I would use a completely different approach because I'm just like, it worked out and it's fine. But like, now that I see how that decision works out, there's ones I would like to do instead, right?
How much money could I have saved? How much hassle could I have saved? How many headaches would I have not had? Yeah. Yeah, like features that were built that like you learn later that you could have done in a week if you used like this product that you didn't know existed. Those kind of things happen a lot, right? I'm just like, when I'm searching, I'm like, come on, find that exact product I want. Because like, yeah, for us, one of the things we identified early was like what we call like sassing it out. Is that like, if you can find a product that's like, that's the only thing that they do, that's going to always be better than building it in-house because they're just going to keep improving it. And even it costs like 20 grand a year or even like, 40 or 50, whatever, right? Like depending on like how valuable it is to what you're trying to do. But an engineer costs, minimum like about 100 grand, right? Like, depending on where they are in the world and their sort of experience level. So like, it's still going to be cheaper. And like, you don't have to keep like, cycling that person. Like that company's dealing with all that. They're just sitting there like with product people dedicated to that. So for us, it was like, if we can find something that does that, we're just going to integrate with that or like use that library or like or whatever, right? Instead of building it ourselves. And I think that served us really well for keeping the team small and, delivering a lot of value for like a lower price. 100%, man. I mean, it's an old saying, but it's not something people will remember often whenever they're in the moment and need to. And that's why reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. If it's already there, it's already proven, it's already working, make it work better for you or make it work in that system for you. I mean, we're the kings of that around here. We've got so many different softwares that it's a budget line item, how much we pay for software every single month and every single year. And every single one that's on there is never going to come off of that budget because it is so like important for us to have these things in place. I mean, talking about mistakes, that's something that Beefy Marketing has learned when Andrew was kind of solopreneuring it up, with a very small team and doing marketing stuff, which was mainly focused on the creative side. And then he realized pretty quickly when you don't have something like Process.st in place and you don't have systems, processes, and automations for what you're doing, and then you're the guy or the girl that's the head of all of this stuff, and it all falls on you, you're going to forget something. You're going to leave something out that was important. You're not going to have it. And there's plenty of solutions out there, to-do lists and everything else. But like you said, it's so easy to circumvent it, even if you're trying to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've had a to-do list on my phone and on my computer where I'm putting everything into to-doist that I need to do, and then it just gets ignored. Because it's like, well, I'm too busy with this, or the notification pops up, I get it out of my face, and then it's like, well, cool. But with Process Street, especially because it's tied to the most important parts of our business, the things that we do, the sales process and the creation process, it's like I'm getting emailed, I'm getting, notifications, I'm getting everything that I need through the app of, hey, we're in that next step, and now it requires you, or it's assigned to someone on the team and just keeps me updated so that in a flash, I can just take a look and be like, okay, I sold this website client. Now the client's asking me, hey, where are we at in the website process? Even though we have other people that are responsible for those parts of the process, I can easily just go back and give that answer to my client. And that's not something we could do for a very long time until we had that system set in place. So it's like, yeah, why go out there and try to come up with and drum up with some way to handle it on our own and waste all this time and energy doing that when someone has a solution, especially the ones that are cost-effective solutions, man, you should take advantage of those like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And it's like the alternative is usually like, yeah, you're digging through like 20 different emails and trying to like cross-reference the threads. And you're like, okay, I think that, Jim did this and like Susie did that, but like, that's not convincing to a customer, right? You're like, yeah. And the other thing too is like, we're talking to like, hundreds of different customers and like hearing all the ways that they're having issues. And like, we're incorporating all that learning into the product, right? Versus like, if you're trying to do it yourself, you just have like one experience to like draw from. So I think that like, that's the same thing with every SaaS product, right? Like they're specialists, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
So what is it, obviously the product changes so often. It's even something that I've seen in the 2 or 3 years that I've been using it, where it's like, oh, we got this new tool rolled out. Especially, I think everyone is well aware that every single thing we use in our life is changing now, thanks to integration of AI, whether it's through an API, like something we can do with, Zapier and Process Street and all these different softwares working together through that API and adding AI into it, or just, like Google's going the route with Bard of integrating it into every product that they have with Google so that you can use it even on a consumer side, not necessarily on the business side. But what makes Process Street different today than your traditional to-do list that you put together?
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways I like to describe it is it's sort of like a to-do list on rails in a sense, where like we were talking about earlier, right? Like you can't go to the lines, like you can enforce like the order, you can say who has to do it, you can say like what fields need to be filled out. So that there's that aspect. And the other aspect is like the repeatability, right? So like it works especially well on processes that you know that you're going to be doing over and over again. And well, I guess that's the definition of process, right? But that was sort of like one of the insights we had as we started to build this, was that like, I think a lot of people think that the things that they're doing in a company are a project, right? So it's like, oh, we're hiring someone. That's a project. We need to, we have the project to hire like, our new CS person or something. But in reality, you're hiring people all the time. That's actually a process. And so like when you go and you say like, each time I'm going to do a project for this thing, that's actually a process, you're like taking all that work that you did and like throwing it out, right? And then starting all over again. Whereas like with the process, it's like, okay, we have our initial one. And then as we run it each time, we're like improving it and like taking our learnings. And so by the time you get to like, the 10th time you run that process, it's well oiled, right? It's taken into account like all these different sort of like, issues that have popped up or different paths that they can take. And now when like a new person coming who's never ever done like the hiring process, they can see all that when they run it, right? And they don't have to like necessarily have been trained, right? So that's to me like where I see like the big advantage of a process oriented approach versus like a project oriented approach, which is what, again, I think that people are most familiar with, because like I don't think necessarily it's in the consciousness as much, the idea of like process management, maybe in huge companies, because in huge companies, like they have no choice. They have to have had a built process or they can't get to that big, right? But I think it's still making its way down into like sort of, the SMB and mid-market space, where it's like, oh yeah, process is like really important and it actually makes your business run like more efficiently and like with fewer errors, right? So
how truly customizable is Process Street? Because that is one thing that I've noticed just a touch, because I'm more involved with Process Street on the utilizing it and getting these projects done so that I've got my 3 or 4 steps in the beginning after I make a sale, and then everything goes to the appropriate party after I'm done. So I'm not totally involved in building it. I was a little bit involved, and I totally forgot our rep's name, and I feel so bad because she is such a sweetheart. She is so good at what she does. I cannot remember at all, but she sat down with us for a few hours, and I was in on some of those calls with Andrew because I do some stuff outside of the sales rep side of things too every now and then. But what I do love about it is the fact that there are so many things you can change and set up for your unique point of view, I guess is the best way to call it. But some of those things too include like when you do hire somebody and they are working from the outside on this new project, or maybe you kind of reassign, butts in different seats so that that person can take over and start doing some more fulfillment side or whatever the case may be. They may not be 100% familiar with that process and why we do what we do. And I've noticed that Andrew has, videos and some text-based instructions inside of each step that tells you like, hey, if you don't know how to do this, watch this video and I'll train you. So where it kind of frees up his time to not have to train every single person on every single task. If you've never seen it before, you could probably get the gist of it by watching the video.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you can, it's within each task. So it's like a checklist oriented like metaphor, I would say. So if you're familiar with like Asana or whatever, like it looks superficially similar to that. The difference is like, in each task, you can add any sort of metadata, any sort of rich media. So you can have like, videos, images, text, form fields, drop downs, linked data sets, email widgets that can send out like an email when you click them or when the task is completed. So that's just within a particular task. And then you can also do things like branching logic, right? So if, I have a sales workflow and if the deal's over a certain size, then I can say like, make sure to include an approval from, your sales manager or something like that. But if not, then that step can just be like removed and it doesn't even show, right? So there's approvals. So you can make sure that like everything that you're doing is being, reviewed by the appropriate people and all that. And everything that you're doing is like, there's an audit trail, right? So like you said, you can go back, you can see who did it, when they did it, any comments they might have had or like, insights, things like that. And then all this stuff is like, can be automated and with any tool that you want, right? So if you connect to Zapier, you can get any app within Zapier. We also have a number of native automations with things like Salesforce and Jira. So for example, internally, we do a bug process where it asks a bunch of questions and makes sure you fill out certain detail before it creates a ticket. So yeah, it's essentially like, because it's, in the space we call no code, right? It's essentially like almost infinitely customizable. It just really depends on like, what your needs are, right? But also when I say infinitely customizable, it doesn't mean that like it's impossible to like figure out how to use. Like one of the big things that we've like concentrated on is making it easy to use. And so like, even though there's a lot of like functionality, it's sort of like layered. So you can be productive right away. And then as you sort of like, need some sort of functionality that you don't know about, you sort of like reach for it and you're like, okay, I need to like make this branching. And you're like, oh, conditional logic's here. Oh, I need this to have a due date like relative to like the task before. It's like, oh, dynamic due dates, right? Oh, I need to pull in someone else, like, oh, assignments. So we've tried to make it so that like as you reach for something that you need, it's there, but it's not like overwhelming and like trying to like force itself into your face kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. I think, and I'm not saying this to ever disparage any company because they're all great. I mean, I've had CRM platforms on this show. I've had people like yourself that have just software that you can utilize in your business and all that kind of stuff. And every single one of them has a unique selling proposition that makes them great. Like comparing Asana and HubSpot and like all these different CRM or planning and task management softwares together. It's like they've all got their own unique thing that makes them best for whatever company is out there. Process.st is probably not the best for every single company that exists in the world. But there's probably parts of every single software that makes sense for each part of that company. But what I love about Process.st is that it does seem it can be anything from as simple as a to-do list all the way up to as complex as a CRM like and again, not that it does what HubSpot does, because it's a totally different product, but you can do a lot of things that HubSpot incorporates into Process.st to the point that you can get as robust as a system like that. Mm-hmm. But then again, like you said, for that beginner that's just getting their feet wet and wants to try and figure out how to put a process in place, this is something that can be as simple as just writing a to-do list out for every single process that you have. And then you just click the boxes as you do it if you're a solopreneur.
Yeah.
All the way up to, I've got multiple teams where there's conditional logic. There's things popping up that are going to happen, looking at the steps that happened before that, kind of like what you mentioned, where, you know, it can say, cool, if Andrew has gone in and looked at this task and completed this portion of the task, but it opens something else back up that John needs to look at, it can almost like create a whole nother task for John to go back and say, okay, well, now I need to be involved in this again with the customer, even though typically on that same process, it wouldn't open that up unless that one thing pops up that says, I need to be there. And to me, that kind of stuff just makes it so much more streamlined to where Andrew doesn't have to make a call with me. I don't have to call him and consult with him. Like, it just happens. It's just there. And so you don't have this block of, well, it's too complicated to get into. I don't want to build this out for my company because I don't think I can learn it. Like you said, it grows with you and scales with you on what you need. But the best part about this is something I've been alluding to, which is if I don't know exactly what I need to do, how much support does your team offer for me as an entrepreneur when I'm like, you know what, I'm in a roadblock. I'm about to just not use this platform at all. What can I do to come to you to kind of get some assistance on making it better for me?
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing support team that are available like in live chat, 24/5. So like, that's always a good resource. We have a help site that we actually use internally as well. And so we try to keep it like as up to date as possible so that like, even if someone within the company is like, I'm not familiar with that feature, like, and then like in our help doc isn't good enough, then like we go and we like rewrite it because like we want it to be as good as like we would use internally. So there's that. And then like, depending on your needs, we also have a solutions consulting team. And so that basically you have, like a Process.st expert, someone who builds like processes all day long for all these different companies, and they can come in and they can basically like, set it up for you. And like, it depends on what you want too, right? If you want us to set it up so that you can take over and completely manage it yourself, we'll build it in a way that we think is going to be easiest for you to manage it with like, sort of like your skill level with processes and such. If you want it to be built to be like, the most advanced use of Process.st possible, we can do it that way too, where we'll keep managing it for you, but you'll have this sort of like, intensely magical experience. Like, we're happy to do that. Like, we basically adjust to, your expectations and needs, if you're dealing with solutions consulting. So there's a lot of options, and they sort of like, scale up depending on, like the level you need and like the size of your company.
Yeah. It seems like with Zapier, especially if your company has Process.st and Zapier, y'all are even able to use these third-party integrations to help us accomplish the tasks that we want to accomplish. I've seen ChatGPT pulled into our processes so that some of these things are kind of automated in the way that it responds. And then, like you said, it's something where I can either shoot off that email automatically to go to the client to say, hey, fill out this onboarding form, or I can just copy and paste that into my own email and send it natively through my email, company or software that I like. And it's cool how they're available. And I looked her up just because I did not want to leave the show without giving Brianna Lutz some love, but Brianna is our associate solutions consultant. I don't know if that's what she still is. I mean, it was back in like March, I think, when we had a really big overhaul with Process.st, because what we realized was we're really good at utilizing technology the way that we need to, but sometimes these tasks do get very complex. And Brianna came in and it was like she was speaking a different language to us because we had no idea some of the things she was doing. And then some stuff we could kind of keep up with. But you're right. They're like magicians when it comes to this because, as you said, that's all they do every single day versus us who maybe once a week go in and try to make this thing work better for us. So when we gave her the information that we wanted this product to do, it was just like, boom, here it is. It's back. I understand where you wanted to go with it. Now tell me what changes you want made from here, and it's good to go. The product is here for you. Yeah.
Sometimes when I watch the videos they make, I'm like trying to figure out how they did it. Cause like I built the software and I'm like, how did you do that? Like, we don't have that feature. And I have to like sort of like reverse engineer like what they've done. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah. So they're wizards for sure with Process.
It makes me feel better that at least like the guy who built it, the one of the fathers of the program is at least in the same boat as we are sometimes, because we're pretty technologically savvy. Like we can figure out most things, and reverse engineering is one of our favorite things to do, is just figure out like, how did they do that? Because there's not a podcast for everything that you can just listen to and hear how somebody built it. So sometimes we have to do that, but it's time consuming.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest selling point for Process Street is that time is our greatest asset. It's our most valuable asset. And especially when you're talking about a founder, a CEO, or a high level corporate executive whose time is worth quite a bit of money, literally, because it costs money for them to work. But then on the same token, that is an opportunity cost. There's phantom costs always that are involved in things. So it's like, how expensive is it really for the CEO of a company and, the vice president of sales to sit down and focus on building out Process Street to work perfectly for them? It's like, cool, maybe we can knock it out in a day, but how much did that really cost your company? So then when you think about paying somebody who can do twice as much or 3 times as much as you would do in that one day in a couple of hours, it's really a no-brainer that it's worth the cost.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to the SaaS thing, right? It's just sort of like, once when you're money rich, time poor kind of, when you're young, you're time rich and money poor. So like, spending your time on this kind of thing, sure. But as you get like further along, then you're like, okay, I'm trying to like save as much time as I can, and I can like spend a bit more on that, right? Then it totally makes sense, right? It's going to be done faster, and it's probably going to be done, using all of the latest features in the correct way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, tell us what kind of customers you're looking for. If there are customers you're not looking for, how do I know if Process Street's a good fit for me?
Yeah. I mean, technically, because of it being a no-code product, it actually, any business I think can benefit from it. I mean, that doesn't really tell any of like the listeners, like, okay, does that apply to my business? What we see like a lot of success in a lot of companies is like employee onboarding, offboarding, client onboarding. So like when you sign like a new customer, and you want to make sure that you've done everything in the right order, you don't miss a step, you don't drop any balls. It works really well, extremely well in those cases. But one of the cool things about Process Street is like, you might have like an initial case that you come in on, and then you end up just using it for like 10 other things in your business, right? And like that's what we do internally, right? We just use it for everything, because it's that kind of tool where once you get the idea, it just like, oh shit, like everything that I've been doing manually, I don't have to do that anymore, right? It's like a big unlock. So yeah. A lot of software companies use us for like IT processes, like provisioning servers, like deployments. VCs use us for onboarding new companies, things like that. We have like a drone company that like uses it for onboarding, but also for like their deployments of like their drones and things like that. So it pretty much, it can be used anywhere. Yeah. But I find like, the best places are like, high cost processes where like mistakes are very, very costly, or things that you're just running often that you want to make sure like are done the right way. Right. And I guess like the third one is there's a lot of cases where it's just like knowledge capture, right? Maybe you don't run that process very often, but when you do, you have to like basically figure it out each time. And so like, I'm so happy when I go to do something like a certificate renewal or something, and I've made a process, and something that was going to take me like 6 hours is going to take me 10 minutes now, because like I've got all the steps there. Right. So those are like the general use cases. Yeah.
It's crazy how, like you said, things can be so customized that you can kind of find a reason to use it for anything. But one that stuck out to me was, like you said, any company can use it, because if you hire people, then you could use this as your onboarding for new hires. Yeah. It's as simple as that, where you can put in, like you said, the rich media that you can put in there, videos, welcome videos, how-to videos, the text documents that they need, all of these different things, including uploading, documents you need signed. so that you have a process in place for making sure that all those documents are submitted. I mean, that's a big thing for us is there's so many different types of projects we have going on sometimes that it's easy, even if I've run something a million times, it's easy for me to oversee or to overlook, I should say, a certain part of the process where it's like, crap, I forgot to get this from the client. And then now for me, you know, it may not be a huge deal, but now it's like, oh my God, now I have to go back. Or God forbid you wind up one day at the point where somebody wants to cancel a contract or something. And then you're like, holy crap, I didn't get a contract signed. And it's like, if we would have had Process.st and had that in place, then we know that it would have been signed before we move forward, because that is a step in our process that says, make sure you have a signed agreement, make sure the customer has paid, all of these things before you start the work. So you're right. It could be very costly for you. And where something may be $1,000 or $5,000 a year. And it's like, man, that's expensive. It's like, cool. But how much was that one mistake you made?
Yeah.
I mean, one mistake cost you 10 grand. Well, guess what? Now you can afford to pay for 10 years of our startup service because of one mistake.
Yeah. No, another one that we use it for actually is for SSO. Like sometimes, a lot of times people get SSO is because they want to make sure that they like offboard everybody from all the different tools and they don't want to forget. Right. And so you get it for that. But like one way when you're like an earlier company is that you just basically make sure you have all your vendors like documented well. And then you just have one step for each vendor. You check for that user in every single one. And it's like, it's a little bit more work executing it than it would be, but like it can save you like a ton of money. Of not having to go and buy an enterprise plan at every single, SaaS product that you use. Right. So and that's just for us. That's just our offboarding, right? Just making sure like for that, for SOC 2 compliance, like we need to have that, right? So like we need to have this document that we went and like made sure to turn off all these different things. We need to make sure that we showed that we, did our exit interview and all those kind of things. So for compliance, it's incredible. Like we just have like our compliance is basically on autopilot now because we just have a bunch of scheduled workflows that run all these different times. And then like, they just remind us, oh yeah, you need to do this for SOC 2. You need to make sure you do your, employee performance reviews because like you need this for SOC 2. So it's pretty cool because like it takes a little bit of work to set it up the first time, but after that it's like, okay, this is nothing now. This thing that used to be like so annoying and like take up like 2 months of our work is something that we just don't have to think about anymore. Right. So
it truly, it streamlines everything.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier. It's not that you're doing less, you're just having to think about it less and put less effort into it because it's serving that stuff up for you. It's literally, it doesn't just tell me, okay, John, you need to collect this onboarding questionnaire from your client now. It literally says you need to get this onboarding form, but here's the form. Here's how you fill it out. Here's what each question means and what you should ask in order to make sure you're answering it correctly. And you can just send this form to the client if you want them to fill it out. Or if you want to have an onboarding phone call or Zoom call, you can fill it out with them right here. And then it's like, once you hit submit, it all goes to the correct person. And now the designer gets it assigned, takes a look at this onboarding form and starts designing the website or whatever thing we're talking about. Now, on these shows, man, it's so hard in 30, 45 minutes to an hour to get all the information that you want about a product. This is for the listeners. I just want to say that we have only barely scratched the surface of what Process.st can do for you, what it means, the things that you can customize this thing to do, the use cases for it. And like you said, you're finding new use cases every single day when somebody gets their hands on it and puts it in touch or puts it into play in a different way. But the important thing here is for those who are considering it, which everyone should be, what is a good way for me to get in touch with you, get in touch with Process.st? Do you have a free trial? Do you have any special offers? Like, how do I figure out if Process.st is something that I need in my life?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best place to start is, www.process.st, Process.st. That's our website. You can watch, some demo videos there and you can request a demo. In terms of plans, we have a startup plan for companies of under 10 employees for $100 a month. And that includes 5 seats. That's if you're a smaller company, that's a great starting point. And what was the other question about it? Best place to learn?
Yeah. Best place to like just kind of learn and see if it's a good fit for me. I think y'all offer a free
yeah.
trial.
That's what I wanted to. Yeah, we have
and,
a 2-week free trial, which includes the full product. So you can try out everything and get a sense if it's for you. I think it is. It's probably going to be for you.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, give it a try. And like, if you ever get stuck or anything, you know, our support team is super, super friendly, super helpful. They want you to be successful. So don't be afraid to reach out. And, you know, if you're a bigger company and you want to get like a more, a bigger demo, you can reach out to our sales team. We have a request demo form. You'll be routed to somebody that can help you and show you basically the best way to use the product with your business.
Yeah. Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing this stuff. I know that, you know, as a product that or a service that I love and something that I use and something I support, it can sound more like a commercial or infomercial while you're listening to this episode right now. But let me tell you, it's not unwarranted and it's not without reason. Process.st truly, I would not say this unless I really meant it. And I will 100% say too that Process.st is not paying to be on this show. They have not paid me for any type of endorsement. Not that my endorsement matters to anybody. But I'm just saying that this is 100% honest opinion from myself, that if you haven't checked out Process.st before, this is something you need to look at, because here at Beefy Marketing, man, we swear by it. We refer it to people all the time. It's a great product, and I think it will fit for anybody. So thank you so much for being on the show, taking your time today. I know, again, time is a valuable asset, and it took you, you know, there's a cost for you being on the show today. And the fact that you're not doing what you want to do in Barcelona right now, except being on this podcast. So I appreciate it, man.
No, thank you for the kind words about the software. Like, I'm delighted that you get so much value from it. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. And listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Small Business Origins. We cannot thank you enough. I wouldn't do the show if it wasn't for you. There'd be no point, right? So without you as a listener being here, this thing would be worthless to me. And I mean, not really, because it's still fun, but I love having people that actually tune in, because it's like, hey, I'm doing this podcast for a reason. So the only other ask I would have of you is please go check out our guests, all of our past guests, including the one you're listening to today. Go to smallbusinessorigin.com. Their guest profiles are right there. You can interact with them directly, see their links, all the things we talked about on the show today, the links that you need to find in order to check out Process.st. You can find those in the show notes, nice and easy below where we're talking right now, whether you're listening on YouTube, you know, Apple's podcast app or Spotify, wherever you're listening. The show notes have all of those clickable links for you. But if you head over to smallbusinessorigin.com, there's a lot more there that you can do, including signing up for our newsletter and supporting the show in other ways. So that's it for us. It's been another great week, another great episode with an amazing entrepreneur and another amazing product. Can't thank you enough for it. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, stay beefy, my friends.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Small Business Origins.
I love an origin story.
If you like what you just heard, leave us a review, subscribe, and share with a friend.
You guys, check this out.
They're going to love it. You're going to love it.